But my top five, I have Clemson at 5. I think Clemson, for once, you could say, has a pretty darn difficult schedule. To have Georgia in there, you have App, by the way,
Yeah, which is not a
yeah,
pushover considering where it's located on the schedule, too.
you have
Right.
App right after Georgia. Bye week, NC State, Stanford, Florida State. So you have NC State and Florida State on there. Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt at the end, and Carolina. You draw NC State and Virginia Tech and Florida State plus
Yeah.
Georgia. That's a tough. Plus Louisville. We don't know what Louisville's going to look like. So I have Clemson at 5.
And look, I agree with you on Clemson, too. It's a good point, but particularly that September is so problematic for them. And I don't, lose to Georgia, again, as I said, I don't think it's the end of the world. But let's say you've got 2 losses by the end of September, or that first week in October. I mean, this is 4 years in a row of there not being a ton of playoff enthusiasm, of people feeling like you aren't the team that you're supposed to be, of lunatics calling into Dabo's radio show. Like, at some point, I think Dabo's made some nice moves this offseason. I think the team is better. I think if you ask me to basically flip the coin between FSU and Clemson right now, I kind of lean towards Clemson. But, those first 5 weeks are going to tell a huge story, and then it's going to be a long 2 months after that if it doesn't go well.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any question about that. Let's jump into the Tigers a little bit here, and let's kind of start with non-scheduled talk. And with what you were kind of saying right there, just give me one thing. I don't need a long list or a couple of things, whatever. One thing that if Clemson fixes, in your mind, they're back to where they're supposed to be, or that dominant team that they were for nearly a decade.
I mean, it's hard to just say the quarterback because so many other factors help or hurt the quarterback. But it is kind of the quarterback. Like, I looked this up for TV the other day. From 2015 to 2020, when they made the playoff every year, their combined total QBR was the best in the ACC. From 2021 to last year, when they've missed the playoff every year, it's the worst in the ACC. 14 out of 14. That is crazy. And look, Cade last year had four or 5 games where he played pretty good. Yeah. And then 4 or 5 games where he played pretty bad. And you've got to find, and look, again, I talked to a handful of folks, and Mac, you could probably speak pretty eloquently on this, but like the O-line scheme and what Garrett Riley really wanted to do, I don't think matched up well, like all of that. And so I think they're in a better place with that. If they're healthier and better at wide receiver, which I think is a big if, despite Dabo's hype, I think that all of these things help Cade Klubnik. But you look at like the slide against Duke or the 2 terrible third down decisions that cost them games, particularly in overtime against Florida State. Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at those and say, like, that's not just like, well, you don't have the talent around you. That's just terrible decision-making in the moment. And that stuff needs to get much, much better.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think part of it, is – we tend to forget that there is a growing up process. Like we just think that everybody, coming in 5-star.
For most people, there are some ready. That there isn't, and Clemson's had a few of those, and that's why they're spoiled.
And they're spoiled by the fact that Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were ludicrous. And I talked to Graham Neff about this a few weeks ago, and he pointed this out, and I hadn't really considered it. But when you add in like the COVID year and all of that, like Cade Klubnik was 19 last year. Jordan Travis was 23. And that's a big freaking difference. And there's several guys that fit into that. Like it's, Michael Penix and Bo Nix, those guys are in the Heisman conversation. Like, Jaden Daniels too. Like those guys are grown men.
Right.
Cade Klubnik's still every bit of like a year out of high school.
Wasn't Penix older than Trevor Lawrence? I think I saw that stat. Or at least about the same age.
Possible.
Yeah.
Very possible.
People forget Penix and Bo Nix, those guys had been around the block. But I mean, I think you're right on that, David. And, we'll see. And the problem, I think, again, what makes Clemson's schedule so difficult is there's no easing into the year, And there's a little PTSD, if you will, from the last time Clemson opened with Georgia. And it almost just derailed your year. Like, I feel like DJU was never the same.
I don't think almost is even – I think it did. Yeah. I mean, it absolutely did. And that's what's fascinating, KG, to me is this is almost – that full circle opportunity of this is kind of what got you into this. Is it going to be what gets you out of it? now that you have
True.
it, or
Could
you
be.
just, forever spiral.
And like you said,
I think that's a great point because look, Georgia's a really damn good football team. And again, if you asked me to make a pick on that game, I mean, it'd kind of be foolish not to pick Georgia at this point, but doesn't this just feel like a perfect Dabo I told you so moment? Like, see, y'all have been doubting me since the last time we played them, and I told you this was going to happen. And like, it just, I can see the narrative in my mind's eye.
Oh yeah, for sure.